Before I introduce today's guest, I thought, let me just talk about the current situation in education. All of our teachers have probably been forced into a little bit of a school holiday. Whether we agree with it or not, that's not the point. The point being that I think all teachers should take a break. If you have the luxury of resting, you absolutely should use the following few weeks to rest as much as you possibly can. You have to look after your mental health. You have to look after your physical health. There's an uphill battle coming. The next few months, and I almost want to say the next few years, are going to be challenging. So teachers really have to look after themselves as much as we can. It doesn't look like other people want to look after us. So we need to take matters into our own hands and rest as much as you can. I mean, go out for that jog. Go and exercise. I know we can't necessarily go to the gym, but exercise as much as you can, eat healthily. But then also in the same vein, I mean, if you want to eat that cupcake, it's good for your mental health. Absolutely do it. So rest as much as you can, but use this time also for some professional development. We have to stay up to date with the latest trends in education. So if you have time, take some time, participate in professional development activities. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of my activities. There's so many other service providers offering a lot of professional development. Make sure that you stay up to date with the latest trends in education and remain relevant, because in the current ecosystem, unemployment is a real threat. And the teachers who are on top of their game, who are really making a difference, those are the teachers that's going to keep employment. So remember, for just even watching videos like this one or participating in professional development, you can claim your CPTD points, which serves as proof that you are on top of your game. So I thought before I introduce today's guest, let me just share this with you. But that being said, today's interview is quite exciting with Mauritz Kotze from School Coding South Africa. It's important. Coding and robotics is such an important part of our curriculum, and it's very new, and not a lot of teachers are exposed or have training in coding and robotics. So I thought, let's have a discussion with Mauritz. Let's talk about what is coding, what is robotics, and is it really that difficult to implement in your classroom? So I enjoyed chatting to him and his team. He also did a little video demonstration of the platform they use for online robotics and coding. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your impressions and hearing your experience about this interview. So please leave any comments or any suggestions in the comment section of the social media platform of your choice. Enjoy this one. Hi, my name is Francois Nordia, and I am a super teacher, and this is Super Teachers Unite, the show that's all about motivating, inspiring, and supporting teachers. And today we're going to talk all things coding and robotics with my friend Mauritz Kotze from School Coding South Africa. Mauritz, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Francois, for the invite.
It's great having you here. The two of us, we've had many encounters online for many years because we work in similar spaces, but we only had the opportunity to meet earlier this year at the Schoolscape event in Cape Town. And after the two of us had a discussion, I just knew that I absolutely want to get you onto the show to talk about the great things you guys do with coding and robotics. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure. I'm just glad it can happen. We've talked about it so long.
Yeah, but here we are. We're gonna have some fun this afternoon. Before we jump into the episode, though, just to let you know that this episode is brought to you by WorldTracker. That's WorldTracker.com, WILTracker.com. It's a platform for student teachers, mentor teachers, and university lecturers. It's a space where we bring student teachers and mentor teachers together because we know the journey towards becoming a super teacher starts at university level. And if we don't give proper mentoring to our student teachers, the generation of next teachers will be lacking. So it's one of my platforms that I'd like to use to bring the community closer to each other, and that we can do some of the mentoring for student teachers online. Is extremely important now when we don't know whether schools are going to allow student teachers back onto the campus following lockdown. We need to have substitutes for mentoring our student teachers. So please go and check out WorldTracker.com, WILTracker.com. And then, of course, if you'd like to be part of our live studio audience, if you want to participate in these interviews and ask questions to our guests, you're more than welcome to do so. Just send me your name on WhatsApp to our WhatsApp hotline, and you would be invited to these events. That WhatsApp number is +27 63 681 6410. I'm going to repeat that. It's +27 63 681 6410. I also use the text-based platform to share with you early access to events that we do like this. But of course, what it's actually meant for is if you need support as a teacher, you've got a question, you've got something that you just want to get off your chest, you're more than welcome to just send me a WhatsApp. You can either do it a voice note or a text, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. It's totally free, and it's not a WhatsApp group, so you don't have to worry about your contact numbers being shared with other people. It's literally just a straight one-on-one conversation between you and me. That's the WhatsApp service, +27 63 681 6410. And then, of course, teachers, you can claim your CPTD points if you participate in these conversations. If you just watch these episodes and you listen to the podcast, you can claim type 1 CPTD points for doing so. If you need assistance with that, just pop me a WhatsApp and I can show you or share with you how you can claim your type 1 CPTD points just for sitting and listening and being part of the conversation. Mauritz, with all of that being said and all of our housekeeping being done, I'm very excited to start chatting about coding and robotics. Please tell me, specifically before lockdown, your company looked much different than what it does now. But before lockdown, what did you do?
So prior to the lockdown, this was supposed to be one of the greatest and best years. We started off with 19 schools, 7,500 students participating on a weekly basis doing coding, and then came COVID-19.
Yeah, that's enough to just like deflate anybody's wheels. Like all of us, I remember because we met like the first week of March. That when I was down in Cape Town, and it was literally, I remember the Thursday before I flew down to Cape Town, or on that Thursday, came the announcement that the first, like patient zero in South Africa was on the Thursday. On the Friday, we had the expo at Schoolscape. And we still had a discussion about our plans for the year and how amazing this year was going to be, just for 2 weeks later for the president to close all schools.
Yeah, and now if you take 2020 and you divide it by 5, you get 404, which is a nice computer error. So yeah, we're just looking for the Control Alt and Delete button. Let's have a restart.
The year 2020 was not found.
Yeah. So no, we were very excited starting off this year with the coding, and especially last year where I assisted the DBE during the March school holiday, knowing what's coming, how the schools will implement coding and robotics and what it all entails. And the pilot would have kicked off during the month of April at schools, and that was obviously postponed. And then schools also started to inform us that they can't proceed now because the focus must now be on academics. And then also they phoned us and said, listen, no extramurals or external service providers may be allowed on campus or at schools. So we thought, well, let's take this as an opportunity and not just this massive burden or loss of income that we're going to face now, and see how we can move or transition from call it one-on-one type of basis in a classroom, working more on an online basis, to offering the coding via our Google Classroom.
And just speaking about that Google Classroom, what we'll do is we'll do a little demonstration towards the end of today's episode. We'll have Sean, that's one of the team members from School Coding South Africa. It's going to give us a demonstration on how they use Google Classroom to assist with the coding and the product. So what we'll do is at the end of today's episode, now, unfortunately for our podcast listeners, this won't have any value for you. So I'd much rather have you come over onto Facebook or onto YouTube to see the final part of the show. But what we'll do is we'll end off today's episode, and directly after that, we'll start with a demonstration that Sean will show us. But Mauritz, before lockdown, you typically went into schools and you worked in the school's computer labs, teaching coding
Yes.
and robotics.
So
Correct?
there was two options available for schools. They could either offer it during school time, then we would train the teacher, provide them with the content, the material, videos, and they would watch it, prepare themselves accordingly, and then offer the class, and that was for grade 1 to grade 7. Or we would have extramural clubs, and then either I or myself or Sean would go in the class and teach there, or we would pay one of the IT teachers who want the extra income and also want to make a difference, and say, okay, let's train you, provide you with the content. And yeah, we have about 5 schools running it as an extramural, and the rest are all in school. And then we also sponsored 2 schools. We got an external sponsor for a school in Atlantis, and then we also said, well, we're going to sponsor another school in Westlake, and just say, okay, let's offer the program there for free of charge, and just see what impact we can make there, just to make that difference. And to get back to the initial plan from the DBE regarding the enrollment of coding and robotics, the emphasis is clear that it will be on digital skills. In other words, how to use the computer. And now with the COVID crisis, we can again place emphasis on that, because if you don't know how to use an online platform, if you don't know how to find your way around Teams or a Google Classroom or Moodle or all these external platforms that just can enrich your teaching, because how are you reaching the kids? Is it via social media? What platform are you going to use, just so that we can get this curriculum across? So there was a lot of learning opportunities. I think at the end of this lockdown and COVID crisis, people can place a lot of ticks next to their CV and say, dotted, I can now teach online. Dotted, I know how Google Classroom works. Dotted, I know how Teams work. And with that opportunity that we now face, it just became so more clear why the emphasis must be on digital skills, and how we can get our children to become digital literate citizens in this country. And the coding and the robotics forms actually a very small part of it, but the emphasis is on critical thinking and problem solving. And we all had to solve major problems, just day to day survival, call it that.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's the one thing that many teachers are I almost want to say have anxiety about, because suddenly, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, the president during his State of the Nation address mentioned that there will be a focus be placed on coding and robotics. If we want to advance as a country, as a society, we need to put emphasis on coding and robotics, and this will now become featured in our school curriculum. So it's
Yes.
something extremely new, and very, very few teachers know about coding and robotics, and they think it's this, it's computer language, and you see
Yes.
these matrix signs coming over the screen, and
Yes.
it's about hacking, and it's all those misconceptions about coding and robotics, when at the actual fact, as you just mentioned, it comes down to computational thinking,
Mm.
critical thinking, and problem solving.
Yes. So I introduce coding to teachers, and then I say, listen, all of you are coders. You are all able to write a simple algorithm and follow it, because how did you get to school today? You set your alarm clock, all those steps were in place, and that is how a computer thinks. And we think it may come natural, but we have to train our children to think like that, to solve problems, to just reevaluate the material. And that's how we link it up with Bloom's taxonomy, so that you're not just at the first basic level, but that you can move to the higher levels of thinking as well.
Yeah, and I think this is a part of the great advantage that you have, because you yourself, you are a teacher. I don't want to say you were a
Yes.
teacher. You
No,
are a
I am
teacher.
for sure a teacher by heart. And so, um, teaching 15 years, 4 of them were in a school IT class, working with grade R's to 7s. And, where the light bulb moment for me came, digital skills and also with the coding, was these kids just came into the class and said, where's the games? I'm like, no, we don't play games. And eventually it continued and continued until I had my motto that eventually became my theme for the Teachers Award in 2015. And I just wrote, we don't play games, we make games. And that sort of became the mantra in the class, where new children from other schools came into the class and say, so where's the games? And then the rest of the class would like a choir emphasize, in this class, we don't play games, we make games. Like, yes, guys, you rock. This is it. And working with the children, because all of them got technology at home. They've got the tablets, they've got the PlayStations, you name it, they've got it, but they do not know the basic skills. So I had to, in the first quarter, teach the same concept from grade R up to grade 7. This is the mouse, this is left click, this is right click, this is drag, this is drop, for 734 students every single week, lesson by lesson, until you could start with some transition and a differentiation between those classes. It was a great opportunity. And then I realized, if I want to make a difference, I don't just have to make a difference in my particular school. I can actually go into other schools as well.
So that's where the idea for your company came
Yes.
from. You actually did it in your own school, and then you realized I can actually reach so many more kids than just the school that I'm working in. And then you moved. Did you gradually move over into your company, or did you just like make a clean break?
It's actually interesting. I'm a teacher, so I didn't want a business. That was never the intention. I want to make the difference. So um, I I actually purchased computers for my home, made sure that they didn't look like the school, so that the school, when they visit, they go, you took some of the computers. No, 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 these are my computers, so don't worry. And because with your extramurals, you had like Mondays and Wednesdays, but Tuesdays meeting, but Thursdays I'm available. Now, why can't I just offer to the schools near my home classes? So I invited children. And basically, the flyer that I sent out landed on the desk of one of the headmasters. And he said, I want this at my school. Can you offer it? I'm like, I would need to employ somebody to do it. He said, I don't want excuses. Just tell me if you can. I'm like, yes, I can. I'm like, and there it started. And then my wife and another school heard from that principal, oh, you've got coding. No, 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 we can't be left behind. We want the coding. So then it was 2 schools. And at that stage, my wife wanted to work from home. And she said, well, she's looking for additional income besides just ceramics that she wants to do full time. And I said, well, here's an opportunity. And she said, okay, gladly. And by the end of 2016, I thought, well, let's do the calculations, do the sums, and it really worked out the same. If you look at what I got out at the end of the month, salary wise, was exactly the same that I would get if I do this full time. And I thought, well, I can only build on it, and that's how it started.
Yeah,
And that was So I resigned end of 2016 and went full time January 2017.
And that just makes sense because you gradually grew the
Yes.
sideline hustle up to a point where you can now sustain your life. But now the amazing advantage here is not just being able to reach more kids, but you don't have the other admin schlep, the other distractions that keeps you away from teaching. Now you can just focus all of your time on the subject matter and growing the business and making an impact.
For sure, for sure. Now I can focus on that. And that's why I also had to look for a partner and had to reach out to Sean to assist, because couldn't do everything alone. You had to do video recordings of the lessons to send to the teachers, made the curriculum, present the curriculum, and also try to visit schools and make calls to schools. And I realized I must decide what the size of this company will be. Will it just be me and my 10 or 15 schools, or do I actually want to grow and become a national brand in this country?
Mm-hmm. Which is amazing. I've been following you since 2016 because that's the same time when I started the YouTube channel. So that's seeing the growth on your side was really amazing, and it's inspiring to see what is possible. To see that a teacher can make a living as an entrepreneur. We had an interview a few weeks ago. with Elissa Kaplan from Yuffie Clothing that had a similar story as a teacher. She's still a full-time teacher, but then having the side hustle. So there's definite ways for teachers to live out their passion and doing what they really, really want to do. Sean, when it comes to computational thinking, I think we need to have a discussion around that, because not a lot of teachers would know what exactly is meant by computational thinking.
So with computational thinking, the idea is to think like a computer. That's in short what it's about. But it's all got to do with, and this is where the coding as a language comes in. The computer can only understand what it's being told. And as a teacher, we are teaching the children and we are asking questions in exam paper. And when we get that exam results back, we're like, why didn't you study? And you first want to blame the students, but then you realize, no, all of them basically got question 4 and 5 wrong, or did not interpret it the way you thought that. And that's where the key comes in with computational thinking, to make sure that the message that I'm trying to send over actually reach you. So I like to play that game with the children called telephone, where you whisper a message in the ear of one child and they have to share it, maybe 10 or 15 children, and then the last child, and then we all have a laugh, not laughing at the child, but with the child, and then we all have a laugh because that's not the same message. And you know, we have to reevaluate how we say things, how we come across. And I mean, imagine what great citizens what we can become if we can all think like a computer and apply computational thinking.
Yeah, so there's 2 variations on the broken telephone game that I saw recently that I think that teachers can start using, because you don't need a computer to teach computational thinking. And
Exactly.
I think that's the important thing to get to.
That's the emphasis the department wants to make, that you can still teach computers, but you don't need the computer. That's right.
So the two variations that I came across on the broken telephone game, the one, you put the entire class like in a straight line, so all of them face the same way, like you would line up for assembly or whatever. And then the last, but it's very difficult to explain without having the visual. So let's test my computational or my communication skills here. So what happens, the person standing at the back of the row, they would do a series of hand gestures. So they need to communicate using like, let's say 5 different hand signals. And the person standing in front of them turns around, you communicate yours to that person, and then that person turns around and shows what they've been communicated to the person standing in front of them. And every time the person in front turns around. So then you compare the first person's hand signals and symbols to the person at the end of the row, at the very end. And you see how the message gets lost in translation, because you're not like taking the exact instructions from each one of the interfaces.
So now you can link that to your digital citizenship. When we laugh, you're allowed to laugh, but it's not bullying. And you know, you just start to teach and coach these children in the way forward. And actually, even us just talking here, we've done some coding and robotics today.
Exactly. Just as an example, I mean, in conversation, you need to know when one person stops and the next person starts. And that in itself is a form of computational thinking.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And then the other variation is similar to that one, but it's you have to like do the broken telephone, give a message, but you're not allowed to say any words. You just have to mouth the words to the next person, and they then mouth the words to the following person, and you hear how the message changes. So that's both a lesson in communication as well as computational thinking.
Exactly. Yes.
Excellent. You say you were part of the team that advised on the new curriculum for robotics and coding.
Yeah, so we're a small group from the Western Cape under the leadership of Jonathan Fries, head of technology, and we went over there basically to review the curriculum, which was in draft format, and to see how we can. There were 2 options basically. Are we looking at a new curriculum or just an adapted one? And the focus was on the GET technology, grade 7 to 9, with especially a focus on the mini pads. So with coding and robotics, and you look at your mini patch, are we looking at a new curriculum? Are we looking at the existing one, but just readapting it? And that was our emphasis. So we had to look at everything covered from grade R up to grade 7, and then see how we can fit it in for grade 7 to 9, because the technology teacher is not the computer teacher. So you can't expect now the technology teacher, for example, coding an Arduino and never heard about this thing, but that actually was supposed to be done by the IT teacher, and just certain skills that must be there. Just like you expect your grade 7 child must be able to know certain grammar aspects, and then you just continue with teaching. So that was basically our role. We are still waiting on the final. Um, well, yeah, so they have met during January again, but we're still waiting for the final before this thing will be made policy.
Okay. And is there anything for our teachers to be worried about or anxious about for when this gets rolled out?
Not at all. I mean, to give you an example of grade 7, a grade 7 be able in Word to add a heading, to add a tab, to add a bullet. It's really basic stuff that we all know by now, but we have to teach our children how to do it. So there's really nothing to stress about. I would say if you're ready now to set up a PowerPoint presentation, if you can type your own exam pages, papers on Word and save it to a PDF, then you are way ahead than some of our teachers. Then you
Yeah,
don't have to worry.
I think that's a major concern. Is like
Yeah,
what will the complexity of this be? Because no teachers were trained in coding and robotics when they
exactly.
were at university level. Now suddenly we are expected to teach it. So, like, to
Yes.
what extent would we be expected to teach this?
Yeah, but you see, Francois, the teacher is actually an amazing species because we can also adapt to a COVID crisis. So we can overcome it all.
Yeah, I'm dead sure that the last 3 months have accelerated our digital abilities. Many
Yes.
teachers who never wanted to touch a computer now suddenly started using Zoom and Google Classroom,
Yes.
and they're enjoying it, in my experience.
Yeah, to add on that, we had one parent phoning us and ask us, so with this coding that you want to do, what platform are you using? And for the first time, this vocabulary, because we are making use of Teams. And I said, oh, that's great, but we don't use Teams right now. We actually want you to do a Google and a Hangout. She's like, oh, really? That's just it. My son must now already attend Zoom swimming classes. I'm like, okay, that's funny. So yeah, Zoom swimming.
Okay, that's an interesting one. What happens if you have your own pool at home? That's
No, we ask, what are the requirements? Shower or bath? Or what are we looking at? Yeah.
Yeah, no. So acceleration of the adoption of digital platforms, digital
Yes.
technology in the classroom, that's something we've been preaching about since the early 2000s, saying that we should start using more technology in the classroom. But now it
Yeah.
takes a pandemic to almost force us to adapt it.
The reason actually for this drive is twofold. In the first place, it's about exposing the children to what digital skills entails so that they can actually make a choice based on experience at the end of grade 9 whether to pursue CAT, computer application technology, or IT, because normally they were just at the end of the grade 9 with no computer exposure for the first time. Oh, I've got CAT, or I want IT because I've helped Gran with a smartphone, so I'm a guru. And the huge dropout rate at the end of term 1, grade 10, it was really a concern for the department. So that was the one reason. And the other reason is just our children lack the skills, our adults lack the necessary skills, and our country must outsource career opportunities, make use of Silicon Valley or wherever, because we just do not have the skills. They made a survey on LinkedIn where you just search for computer careers available. Now, this is anything from know how to turn on a computer until your real hardcore coding. And there were about 130,000 vacancies just in that positions, and they were not filled. There were about 20% or so filled. And when you ask these guys, but What about the rest? They say they don't have the skills. They've got the CV, but not the skills. And this is the main crisis in our country. Not necessarily that we have a huge unemployment rate because we don't have the jobs, but we actually have the unemployment rate also because we have the lack of skills.
Yeah, and that's something that we can address at school level, and we don't need to wait for a specific subject to be created
Yes,
in order to start incorporating this in our teaching. But
exactly.
that expects of teachers to actually upskill themselves.
Yes. And now one of our advantages with this online coding, so our whole curriculum moved online, and the silver lining is that children or parents at schools where coding is not offered and say, listen, I want my child to do this, they can now make contact with us and they can enroll their children into our program as well. So that's a great opportunity.
No, absolutely, and I think that's a great way of making it accessible. But talking about access, what was your experience in the last while with regards to schools and kids not having access to the internet because of data issues?
Yeah, it was an issue. What assisted us was that you can still access your Teams or your Google with a smartphone. You did not really have to sit in front of a computer. So the parents would give them their cell phone. The child can quickly view the activity, it's short activity, and then they can go offline and do the activity on their computers. But we did not really investigate at this stage lessons that you could do if you don't have data available. So that was or still is a challenge for us.
Yeah, that's a discussion I'm having on so many different levels. Is the fact that we don't have equal access to the internet is just
Yes.
creating more social injustice and perpetuating the inequalities that we have in the country. But I mean, it's not necessarily a problem that I can solve or that you can solve. We can only
Yes.
work with on the platforms that are there, and it's important that as soon as people start getting more and more access to the internet, that there is platforms and programs
Mm.
available for them to access.
Yes. Yes. I agree.
Um, Mauritz, I'm thinking about like grade R to grade 3, the foundation phase.
Yes.
What type of platforms are available to teach coding for these kids?
So for your grade R's, actually, they don't do coding. According to this proposed curriculum, grade R's will not do coding. If their focus is more on practical work, there must be like a computer corner in the classroom. So it's not even required that the child go and visit the computer classroom, but there is computer activities, worksheets that the child can complete. So for example, do a birthday chart. Let's do a tally. You work with your building blocks, you actually build a little tower, which one is the highest, which one's the lowest, and that is how they worked out the computational thinking. You play in the computer corner, you work with a keyboard, and there you already start with word processing. So that's very interesting. And then as you progress grade 1, then they take you to the computer class. You get exposed to your normal Microsoft software because most schools provinces signed the Microsoft license agreement. So we make use of Microsoft literacy. The, they do that whole literacy. They can look at PowerPoint, do Word, Paint. And if you are looking at coding, then they start off with Scratch Junior, which is a very basic program. Grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3 are introduced to the normal Scratch block base that we currently have available. And then gradually it will progress until you get to a grade 7 child that must write just like a one line heading in HTML. Um, yeah, so it's a gradual approach, and also for the teachers, because now one of the main concerns was this is now great, but what about the time? How much time are you going to spend to coding? So let's, for example, say now it's going to be 2 hours a week or an hour a week. It's like, okay, that's awesome, but where are we finding the time? Because we're definitely not going to lengthen the school day.
Mhm.
And at this meeting, which we had March last year, that was one of the concerns. And the quick answer was, we are not going to lengthen the school day. So obviously the next question would be, what sacrifices are we going to make subject or curriculum wise so that we can actually now bring in the digital skills? And the response was no sacrifice. The digital skills will be an addition to the current existing curriculum, actually strengthening and enriching the existing curriculum. So that's the whole emphasis.
Okay. And how difficult is it for a teacher to learn scratch coding or HTML?
Um, well, HTML is a bit of a challenge, but you can have your first line of code. I would first start with Scratch, just as a quick introduction. It's just a sprite or a character that must move, blocks that snip together. And the way we would talk is the same that you would apply these blocks. Move 10 steps forward. If you click on move 10 steps, then the cat moves 10 steps. If you put it in a repeat block 5 times, so it's going to move 5 times in a repeat block, 10 steps, and it move, 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 move. And then you take them to a text-based program, for example, like Python, and then they just type out print, and you do the same thing, and you have sentences, hello world, whatever you want to type, inputs, outputs, uh, and you get these nice programs that you can start to write comprehension wise. I mean, I've got one program that I assist the children with, knock knock it's called, and then the computer actually, because you've programmed it, asks, what is your name? And you type your name. And they said, okay, what is your favorite movie? And you type your favorite movie. And then it asks, where do you stay? And you say your a place or area where you stay, and then it asks you, what may I watch this movie at your place, and even mention you. And it's like, no, this is getting a bit scary. And then you start to explain to them, but don't provide your details just to anyone on platforms or on an email or in a Facebook, and make sure with who you are communicating, and if you are concerned, with who can you chat. So now the life science starts to come in. Who can I chat to if I get strange messages on my cell phone that makes me uncomfortable? Can I talk to a parent, a teacher who's available? And that is actually nice that the digital skills, according to the department, will actually just encapsulate what we currently have available. And I'm really excited about that.
And I think that's where the art of teaching is going to prove very
Yes.
valuable for those good teachers, where they can go and say, well, listen, here is a part of our curriculum or part of the content that we're already teaching. Now we can incorporate it within the coding, or we can bring the coding to the content and start integrating the methodologies and the
Mm.
content together between different subjects.
Exactly. Yes. That's the whole emphasis that they want to make. So, it's flipped classroom, everything that you start to incorporate, doing it that way. Yeah.
So, do the programs that you have, is it focused solely on like teaching coding to the kids, or do you have elements that are focused on teachers?
We have teacher training as well. So, this is what the curriculum entails and how to prepare teachers for that. And also now we've launched a new program where we assist teachers to set up their Google Classroom or their Teams Classroom, because it's now something weird and new. And who do I approach? Is it now the IT teacher at the school? And, now you run to the poor IT teacher who's also, he's only in that position maybe because he know how to power on the kettle, and that was one of my perks which I had when I was the teacher in the IT. I got that label because I knew where the kettle was or how to set up the sound room, and I don't know anything about Google Classroom or Teams or whatsoever. So now the teachers would come to me, but we want to assist the teachers, assist the IT teachers, so that they can come to us if they need help on how we can collaborate, how you can get this Google Classroom in place, and the amazing features that's available with these tools that we've got. Yeah.
No, that's excellent. And I think one of the big things that we need to focus on is that this is new, and there needs to be specific methodologies, because if you're a
Yes.
teacher, it's not as simple as just like reading from the textbook. There's
Mm,
specific methodologies that go with teaching. For instance, if you teach biology, there are different methodologies that you can use
mm,
for different content. And it's not just as easy as, okay, well, as you said, I'm somebody that's a little bit tech savvy. I know how to like switch on the kettle, as you said. It's
Yeah.
not just so transferable. If you really want to be an excellent coding and robotics teacher, there are specific methodologies that works for certain areas and that don't work for other areas.
That's correct. Yeah. So wherever possible, we demo and showcase a class to that teacher. We assist the teacher. So all our schools that make use of our program, we walk a path with them. It's not just you bought something and thank you for your service and goodbye. It's now how can we assist? What do you require? What do you need? And how we can really make this new adventure, this new journey, just easier for them and a great experience for both teacher and child.
Yeah. So one of the major challenges, and it's not just only with like teaching programming or coding robotics, it's throughout most of the subjects, is when you get this juncture between the way in which a kid is taught in primary school to do something, and now they get into high school, and the teacher over there doesn't agree with the way in which the kid does it, versus what is actually happening in real world practice. So how
Yes.
do you alleviate that challenge from like having effective succinct code throughout, or just some form of coherence between what primary school teachers are teaching, what high school teachers are teaching, and what the industry wants?
Well, the advantage is that there currently doesn't exist much for primary schools. They've got the labs, but the children go into the lab and there's no guidance for the teachers. And there is some curriculum, there's curriculums available that schools may have purchased, but in most cases I'm in it and that's about it. I'm stuck. I'm on this island. I don't know which way forward. Watch a YouTube video. Play a game, keep yourself busy. Nobody's going to complain because the teachers got their free admin period because they're off, and you as the teacher must now have all these children in front of you and never taught any digital literacy or what it really entails. It can be so overwhelming. When they reach high school, now they have to choose CAT or IT, and the language is now all of a sudden different. You have to teach Delphi. Now they haven't heard Delphi. It was now Microsoft and doing Scratch and playing games or making games, and all of a sudden it's Delphi. But with our curriculum that we've set up, focusing on problem solving, focusing on critical thinking. For example, if you have to create a variable and you assign the variable a certain value, then that will be the same. That's a computer concept. Now, whatever language you use, whether it is C or Java or Delphi or whatever, a variable is a variable. So we want to try to prepare children, because with computers, you know yourself, tomorrow there's another Windows available, and tomorrow there's another Android or there's another phone, and then you have to learn that again. So we can't say that the program I'm teaching the child in grade 1 or grade 2 will still have the same value when they reach grade 12 and say, no, we must stick to this program because there's now vacancies. Everybody's talking Python, so we must teach Python to our children. And once our children reach grade 12, then there's maybe now they want to do Ruby or Perl, and that's now the new language. But we just try to make sure that the concepts or the thinking skills, those tools, that the child's got that in their toolkit and that they are prepared. So when they reach high school or eventually the job market, then we have hopefully shortened this gap.
Yeah, I think that's the true essence of this, is that we shouldn't be focusing so hard on the actual language being used to
Yes.
code, but it should be those skills and those concepts. Because and that's one thing in teacher training that's very pertinent, is it doesn't help we train teachers on the CAPS curriculum, because in 5 years time, 10 years time, who knows, the curriculum changes and now suddenly we've got an entire cohort of teachers who can't teach. It should be about methodologies, pedagogies, and content, separated from the modality of CAPS, for instance.
Yes.
Because then you can go and teach any place in the world. It doesn't matter what
Yes.
curriculum they use.
Yeah,
You've
that's
got
a good
content.
point. Very good point, because I think you were in that same situation where the curriculum changed 3 times. and it was OBE, and then it was CAPS, and it just changed and changed. And you're very right. It's going to change again. And I think that at the end of the day, the only constant. We have to experience change.
And if we start teaching that resilience and that growth mindset to the kids and telling them that, all right, now you're using one specific platform or one specific language, next time or next year or in the future, you're going to learn something else. But the basic principles remain the same.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. That's
Excellent.
well summed up.
That's what I pride myself in. I've got a question here from Dorian. Dorian asks, what age groups are being looked at for content sequencing? Example, movement from block coding to text-based coding.
Yeah, that's one of those gray areas. If we look at the proposed curriculum, actually, children should only stick to block-based coding until up to grade 9 and start to do text. I think that's to assist with, now you're going to teach a language called Delphi. So you're going to do block-based all the way up to grade 9, but when you reach grade 10, start to introduce them to Delphi. Delphi is another debating point. Whether it will stick, I don't know. But for us, I have started to introduce children, especially if they are brilliant with the Microsoft literacy. I mean, they can right click and left click and drag and drop. And if you can apply that to Scratch, okay, now you can create variables. Good. You can make the sprite move. Wonderful. You can make your games. The only differentiation is now changing the sprites, the order of the scripts, and it keeps on. It's the same thing over and over. Okay, they can do that. So now what? Now we start to introduce them to Python as early as grade 4 so that they can start to type. And that is one of our key struggles at the moment, that children are so used to tablets and smartphones that they do not know how to type. They do not know how to use the mouse. So we would sit with grade 4 children, come to us for the first time. They want to now learn coding. And we say, okay, what do you use? Then they put their finger on the screen because they think it's interactive. They take this poor mouse and they move it across the whole desk, and it only moves a couple of millimeters, and they are so annoyed and frustrated. And then you have to guide them. So it's really to take each child where they're at, and that is key to making this successful, but also to take each teacher where they at. You know, it's great, a new curriculum or a new subject, but we need to do a step by step. It's not something that you can do overnight.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. See, Dorian says in the chat there, great point. And I agree with that. And it's actually like that throughout the school. It's not new just for coding. It's all over the place. If we need to differentiate, you have to know the kids. So you absolutely need to build that relationship. And then as an artist, as a teacher, guide them along the journey. So yes, we're running out of time. This conversation has gone quite quickly. Before we move on over to the demonstration that Sean will show us, I ask all of my questions all of my guests these questions. Mauritz, what is your superpower?
Oh, that's easy. I'm a coder.
So how does coding assist you in your personal life?
Coding assisted me in my personal life. You know what? Just looking at the world differently. Through code, a new world has opened for me. It's really like you had to choose between the red and the blue pill in the Matrix, and I've chosen the correct pill. I can honestly say I can see the world of code and the way you look at problems. It's just from a different perspective. I would say that is truly a superpower, where you can reevaluate, apply critical thinking, apply problem solving. When you watch a movie, when you watch an episode on TV, you can, or even the news, whatever you watch, you can just read a book. You can apply critical thinking and problem solving skills to that. So it's just part of my nature.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's like up to this point, a very select few people have got that privilege because they know coding as a language to assist them in problem solving. I can't wait for the day, and that's why I'm glad this is part of the school curriculum, where coding is commoditized, where every single person can code just like every single person.
Yeah, it will become another language. That's right. Yeah.
And that's going to open up so many doors for everybody. So I'm excited
So
about.
basically, to conclude, I read somewhere, at the end of the day, there will be two types of people: those who can code and those who can't code. Yeah.
Yep. And that's going to create a major rift. That's why we have to, as we look
Exactly.
at the way in which artificial intelligence
Yeah.
is being going to be introduced into society, you'll need to be able to interact with the
Yes.
technology in
Yeah.
order
Because
to know.
you don't ask an adult today, can you read? Do you know how to read? Do you need help with reading? You just expect that from them. And in 20, 30 years from now, that hopefully would be the norm as well. You won't even ask that question, do you know how to code? You will assume, and I know this person will know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's some interesting developments, and I'm sure we can spend a lot of time speculating about what the future is going to look like, but that's not what the aim of today's conversation is. What I'm going to do, Mauritz, I think I'm going to sign off here just for our podcast listeners, because they won't be able to see the demonstration that Sean is going to show us. But before we sign off, Mauritz, where can people find you if they want to contact you? How can they get a hold of you?
The easiest is just on our website, schoolcoding.co.za. I don't know, can we type it in here somewhere as a comment?
Yeah, sure. We can definitely pop
All
it
right.
in there.
So
And I'll also share it when I say share out or distribute this episode. I'll
yes.
also
Okay.
put it in.
So that's the easiest way. Is thanks, Sean. So at schoolcoding.co.za, and you can click send an email to us at support@schoolcoding.za, and then we can just assist and take it from there. Yeah,
Yeah,
would be
that's it.
great to have like-minded people on board. Yeah, just to talk.
That would be great. I also know you're very active on LinkedIn, because that's one of the big platforms that I got to know you. And on LinkedIn, you're also still school coding.
Yes, school coding on LinkedIn, school coding on Facebook, school coding on Twitter.
Okay, there you go. So if you'd like to reach out to Sean and them, you can do it on all those platforms. So we're gonna greet our podcast listeners. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll play the outro to you, but then for our people on Facebook and here on Crowdcast and later on YouTube, what we're going to do now, I'm going to invite Sean on stage, and I should have probably have done that already, but let me quickly grab Sean here and invite him on stage, so we can get to know him as well. And he's going to showcase the Google Classroom experience that you have created.
Hello.
There we go. Hi, Sean. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Excellent having you here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to disappear off screen, and I'm going to minimize Mauritz as well, and hand over to Sean to just showcase us. You can just share your screen on your side, and then we'd be able to see what you have to show us.
Okay, no problem.
Let me do that. Over to you, Sean.
Okay. Can you see the Google Classroom?
No, we can't yet. You just have to share your screen on your side.
Okay, I'll try that again. That's interesting. It works just like the Google Hangout.
There we go.
How's that?
That's perfect.
Okay, so this is our Google Classroom. We also make use of Microsoft Teams, but we managed to get online with our Google Classroom in the first month of lockdown. And you'll see that we've created a number of courses here according to different technologies or different grade levels. And we've also got a couple of courses in development as we learn how to make this a better experience for children. We took all the extramural students and added them into a bunch of classes. Mauritz, which class would you like to have a look at?
8 puzzle classes.
All right, so we've got 2 classes that work with Ed Puzzle. And I'm going to have a look at coding with Scratch. And this works with the Scratch 2 application, which is an offline application. And what we can see here as they log into the classroom is the latest content that we've shared with them, which pops up at the top. And if they want to see what's come before, they can scroll down and they can actually go right to the beginning of the course. So that's a timeline view of what's been done. As a teacher, I can then quickly view work that needs to be graded. And I can see immediately how many assignments have been turned in, how many I need to grade, and how many I'm missing. And so I could then jump into that, and I could then start assessing work. And I can actually see what a student has done, because we ask our students to attach work. So here's an example of a video that one of the students has made. We teach the kids how to record their screens and then how to upload that into Google Classroom. So I can then go through student by student and see how they respond to the assignments. So there you can see how there's an animation, there's a background, there's some movement. So this just shows some different ways to get this right. So that's a student recorded video, and you can see it's been graded, and that earned a 62.5%. I can also give some personal feedback over here. And one of my favorite new features is this little button called Note, which allows me to record my voice and give verbal feedback. So you can see we're jumping straight across media. We're working on an online website system using an offline coding program called Scratch. They're recording videos of what they've made as they respond to the requirement, and when upload these videos, we can then give feedback in a raw format. So that will just transfer itself now. So I can now post that feedback, and I'll probably have to explain to the kids to actually get this straight feedback. But you can see it also transcribes my voice, which is really nice. Once I finish grading the student's work, I can jump on to the next student work and go through. Now, the instructions for this particular assignment are in a video. So there's the link. It's no instructions on this page, but anything the student needs to do is click on the link. And this takes them to a video which Mauritz has made, which has a number of multiple choice questions built into it. So I'm going to play a bit of sound. And you can see as the video plays, we've been able to insert comments. For example, this one explains to the students how they have to actually download this program before they watch it. When they're ready, they can continue. So each of these little droplets at the bottom shows a question. And here we have a marker. Why are we doing this lesson? What do we want them to learn?
In this, show you that we can change the slides
So there's a bit of feedback on that, but audio is really excellent on the video itself. You can see now the multiple choice question. Can you charge this client's costume? So the part that's displayed explains yes, you can. And then to check whether they're paying attention, we then throw in this multiple choice question. What do you think, Francois? Can you change a client's costume?
I think we can. I didn't listen to the entire video, Sean, but I'm sure we can.
Okay, no problem. If you missed something, there's a really convenient little button here which allows you to rewatch. And that sort of rewinds the video just to the previous section. Let's listen now. I'm not sure if you heard that across the cast.
No, I don't think it's possible to hear the sound on this platform.
Okay, no problem. So I'll take your yes that you said earlier, submit that. And you are 100% correct. Well done.
Thanks.
So you can see here, there's immediate automated feedback that tells the student whether they got that right or wrong, and then they can come to me.
Sean, could you show the grade book?
Yes. So once they finish watching this video, it then posts back into the student work. So you can see that's how this score arose. And then also, as a teacher, I can have a look at the grade book. And I can go into that particular class. And you can see it showing the grade range just for the last few assignments. But let's take it back. We got started with this somewhere back in May. And there you can see all the assignments. If we wanted to, we can look at that particular assignment that I'm busy with. And here we can now see there are all the questions. And how many students got each question right or wrong. So as a teacher, this is amazing feedback. I can know exactly how my students have done. But if I want to see a particular student, you can see now these are the students who watched it, when did they last watch it, and let's have a look here. Okay, I want to see why did this student only get 60%. So they only watched 60% of the video, and they only got a 38% grade, and I can now go and see specific questions, how they did, right or wrong, and I can give feedback. So this is very personalized, it's very specific.
Hold on, let me just, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. Awesome. Please continue, Sean. That's awesome. Thank you for showing this to us. So, Mauritz and Sean, you guys developed this this program by yourselves.
We could develop the coding part of the program, yes, but just making a use of the tools currently available, like Edpuzzle and Google Classroom.
So it's basically if a school or a teacher or like students want to enroll in your program, like the entire course has been done. It's basically an online course that they can
it's an online course, and they can follow it at their own pace. So I've created all these videos, and just so to explain, before the lockdown, we would have given these videos to the teachers. The teachers would have prepared accordingly, but now we've taken the same video, added some questions for the students to complete online, and they can then also minimize the screen or work on a mobile phone and then do the activity on the Scratch offline version as well, just to save on data.
That's absolutely amazing. Sean and Mauritz, thank you very much for spending the time with me this afternoon and showcasing what you guys are doing, but chatting about coding and robotics. I think that's important. So thank you very much for being with us today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
To everybody, thank you for spending the time with us. Remember, if you like what we do here, please click on that like button and share with your friends. But if you're on YouTube, it would be great if you can subscribe. Our podcast listeners are gone, but if you could leave us a review, that would be awesome. Because remember, our whole mission is to motivate, inspire, and support teachers. And it would be great if we could unite all super teachers under one banner so that we can make a positive difference in each and every classroom. Until next time, my name is Francois Nordier. With me, I've got Mauritz Kotze and Sean Grant, and we are Super Teachers.